excuse me, we Unitarian Universalists love this song, and we talk big about how much we value interdependence. But when I step back to see how we're living this out, I fear that in some ways we walk small. When most of us hear the word interdependence, we think of our seventh principle, our beautiful seventh principle. We affirm and promote respect for the independent web of all existence, of which we are a part. We've been proud to be environmentally aware and active for, I don't know how long. Eco-realists foresee that ordinary people like us and our neighbors will have to make enormous adjustments to live through climate change. Small neighborhoods may need to pool ideas, resources, energy, and support. And this is interdependence in its grassroots form. I wonder how many of us really know our neighbors, though. After many years of living in somewhat anonymous complexes where I don't often meet or even recognize neighbors, I now share a house with 3 other men. 2 of them are related to the couple next door, and some of them know a few of the neighbors, but mostly we drive up and down the street not really knowing who's within a stone's throw of us. At least I don't. It's common for UUs to be best friends with others within our congregations, but few can walk to visit each other. Imagine in critical times building whole new networks closer to where you live in order to create life-saving interdependence. Although not long ago we might have had optimistic ideas of how strangers will create new bonds in a crisis, the pandemic shows the harsh reality that differences of mindset and trust make such social bonding difficult and, if not hazardous. I have never come as close to arguing with a stranger in a public place as I did in a laundromat one day. A man drives up in a truck decorated with Canadian flags and wants to talk about how he's never met anyone with COVID and he doesn't really believe anybody's sick. This can be an enormous stumbling block against interdependence. Crises breed fear, which breed chaos. And then there's denial. And I'm not speaking of the social, political, and commercial denial that was so appalling to see for decades. The one hopeful thing that's emerging from the increasingly evident damage to national and global environments is that finally, only the most obtuse, ignorant, and self-serving can maintain their denial of climate change. We don't have to have balanced reporting anymore. Yet far too many of those people still have positions of power and economic influence, the ones that still want to deny or minimize. Rather than all that, though, I want to bring our personal denial into focus, our personal denial. And I mean a couple of things by this. One is the ability to observe, to be intellectually aware that denial exists, even my own, yet not feel the impact of it at our deeper levels. We can know we're experiencing denial without feeling the reality of what we're denying. I experienced a moment of breakthrough during a dinner party conversation many years ago about this exact topic, the emotional impact of climate change and the denial of it. In passing, someone refers to Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road, which is also made into a film. And many of you know that it's a tough, exquisite reading. The story takes place after some cataclysm has devastated what must be most of North America and maybe most of the world. Cities are empty and half destroyed. The countryside is barren. There are no birds and few people. Morality has all but disappeared. Even the trees are falling down because their root systems are dying. A father is trying to get his 9-year-old son as far south as possible to the ocean. thinking they might survive nowhere else but there. When both reading the book and seeing the film, I assume that this apocalyptic breakdown is the result of something very far away from my life and control, maybe war or chemical spills or something. But when the road is mentioned around that dinner table and we're talking about denial, I suddenly, realize it could have been an environmental breakdown that happened in that story. And that therefore, all of us, I had something to do with it. And it blew me away to think that. I know that sounds kind of belated, but I had never thought of that before. Perhaps like the lost people of Easter Island, originally Rapa Nui, humanity has simply used up all the resources until there are none left. Perhaps global warming has brought about gigantic fires, sending up ash into the sky and dimming the sun. To imagine even for a moment that how I live might contribute to the future displayed out shocks me. This punctures denial of the utter sorrow presented in that bleak world, where even the love of parent for child is on the verge of being snuffed out. Now, there are lots of other stories about post-climate change dystopias, but the road is more intimate than those, and it pierces the veil. I feel guilt and shame and anguish. It's difficult to live without denial when denial surrounds us. When the newspaper is ridden with articles about environmental breakdown, but the predominant ads are for expensive cars, fashion, jewelry, and global travel, and yes, my beloved Globe and Mail, I'm talking about you. Shame on you, really. Except you have to exist, and so you have to have those ads, blah, 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 blah. It's clear we're living in an illusion. It's also difficult to set aside denial when you can barely conceive the impact of the loss because the stakes are so high. That dinner party shock of awareness is now only a memory, not constantly in my consciousness, because that would be unbearable to have that state of moment in my mind all the time. It's difficult to live without denial when you have trouble facing powerful feelings. I suspect few of us are masters at doing that. And that brings me to another aspect of denial that I noticed that evening. I recognize how representative of many UUs that particular dinner table represents, precisely in the way we have difficulty talking about our feelings and being vulnerable with each other. And these people knew each other very well. I knew them very well. And I'll remind you, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a retired psychiatrist, a retired minister, and I worked in chaplaincy for a while. So that combination triply disables me from talking about almost anything but feelings and vulnerability. I realize that. So be careful if you want to invite me for dinner. But it allows me to see quickly what we're doing in that dinner. We're answering questions about how we feel with statements about how we think. And I bet you're familiar with this. My sense is that people often hesitate to talk about feelings because we attach shame to them. Then we fear that others will see us as lesser somehow. Yet the best way to get to know somebody and develop trust is to share feelings, and especially to disclose what shames us. By now, you might reasonably be wondering why this touchy-feely stuff is important. If we act in the world that is responsible to our values, that hold up the well-being of all living things, we need to recover as much as possible from the delirium of denial within which we live. To do that, we need to be able to face our feelings, some of our most powerful and threatening emotions, And we need to help each other with this emotional honesty so that we can bear the changes we will need to make and help others make. Part of maturing as a community, which is of course an endless process, is to become better at dealing with the inner depths of life. That is courageous work to do, which none of us can do alone. Facing the future isn't going to be an intellectual exercise. It's going to shake us up. We'll need to depend on each other, even so that we can face our feelings and vulnerability. Only from there can we authentically decide what actions to take. And as if that isn't enough, there's one more implication. Whatever actual changes are coming, it's clear that living is going to become harder. We will need to learn to depend even physically on each other more and more, whether just within this community or in the various circles and neighborhoods within which we live. When I mentioned that weekend that we're going to need to become more comfortable with dependence, someone responds, interdependence. That's confirmation of where we UUs are and aren't in our big talk. Adding inter to dependence masks the dependence part. It's easier to imagine interdependence because I'm pretty sure we imagine that it means someone else being dependent on me temporarily and giving us opportunities to be and to be seen as a good person. What are you going to do when the dependent person is you? Dependence is about the closest thing UUs have to a 4-letter word. And we are UUs. We take 10 letters to say a 4-letter word. This is despite the fact that there are so many examples of beautiful relationships and wonderful accomplishments that occur within the frame of dependence. Look at children. When a child, not your own, comes and asks you for help or wants to sit on your knee, can you think of anything more beautiful than that? It's joyful, it's a blessing. Terry Fox comes to mind as such a fiercely independent person, but of course, he had a circle of people, technical people, family, medicine, doctors, that supported him. So he was very dependent as he was able to express his independence. That was an interdependent circle. One last story is a friend of mine tells about his favorite aunt when she was very elderly. It's his favorite story of her, favorite memory of her. She's an elegant, refined woman, and they're dignified yet so loving, and they're going to the opera. But before they leave, she has a terrible accident in the bathroom. She calls him in to help, maintaining her dignity and accepting what has happened as simply what happened. An accident for which she needs very intimate help cleaning up. The lesson she teaches him in simply dealing with circumstances without internal conflict and asking for help and accepting it without embarrassment. That's what makes this his favorite memory of her. Now, virtually no one wants to be in these kind of dependent positions, but learning to be able to depend on someone when that's necessary helps crack the brittle facade of social pride that can build barriers between us. It brings lessons of humility and acceptance. There can be beauty and blessing in depending on someone and needing their help. It can be the most meaningful gift we ever give.